Hi, Joseph Connellan here. I just wanted to go over how to use some SDA, some specialist disability accommodation data, and how it can provoke a conversation about what's really going on with SDA in your community. So here's a classic diagram that I use to essentially match participants with houses. So let's just unpack that a bit. So the first thing to say is that what we're looking at is demand and supply in the classic market sense, but we're also focusing on local government areas. Data is provided by the NDIS in a whole different range of types and locations, but I like to use ABS SA3, Statistical Area 3, because that broadly equates to a local government area, and a local government area broadly equates to a community. It's a bit rough, but it gives you a knowable area. So in this case, we had 318 participants of SDA funding and 322 places in SDA properties. So what sort of questions does that generate for me? And I suppose the first question is where to get the data from. And it's a bit of a dig, but it's not really that hard if you step through it. So the first thing is you go to the NDIS quarterly reports page. You then look for the quarterly report supplements and look for supplement P, which is specialist disability accommodation. And there's about 20 something different tables there, but the one I use is P17, table 17, and table 15, one for demand and one for supply, that you can have a dig around and have a look and see what you find interesting in that. So when I've got this set of data coming up, a whole bunch of questions spring to mind. The first one is it's the amount of people utilising their SDA funding. So the question is, why are 20% not utilising their SDA? This is a question that can only really be answered at a local level by local people you would know, but looking as an outsider looking in, that's the first question. Second one is there, are the people with unused SDA sitting simply in still houses? So it means that they have sort of dropped out of the SDA system, or it's too hard, or the providers have actually set up their own, the support providers set up their own housing system. Third one is, how many of those with funding are looking for a different some form of housing? Because this essentially is a market. You know, if people are happy where they are, I'm not going to move, there's no demand. But if people want to move, that's demand. Next question is, who are the SIL providers? These are obviously very important to this whole equation, in part because the people living in the SDA are dependent on their support providers, but also they control a very large amount of the NDIS resources that are used to support the individual person. And then the subsequent question, of course, is, do the SIL providers have their own SDA, or do they have their own SIL houses? That becomes really important when you're having this conversation. Next one is looking on the property side. Is there a 20% vacancy a sustainable one? Particularly if we've got old and big houses. I wonder about that. Next, and looking at this old and big houses, this of course represents a large proportion of the supply. There's over 200 places here out of 300 in 4 and 5 bedroom stock. So can this old stuff be redeveloped into something more? And the other subsequent question, I suppose, is how much of it is basic, and when will that basic funding come to an end and will simply drop out of the SDA system? And it does then go to that bigger question of who are the SDA providers active in your local government area. And when you're looking at the mixture stock, you see some of this older, bigger stock. And I initially thought these are all institutions, but when I dug into this particular one, I found they were highly specialised units which are likely to continue for the longer term for particular cohorts. So you can't assume that big is just institutions by themselves. Looking at the stock, I mean, I really want to know how much the state government owns and what they're going to do with it, because often they're big players. And then what do the non-government owners, how much do they own, and what are they going to do? And then finally, how does the 1 in 3 funding impact on those 1 and 2 resident SDAs? Are they sustainable? Is there people with funding, support funding, that's not just SDA funding, but support funding that can occupy them? So there's that equation, there's that chart. Fairly simple one, but as I said, you can populate with a whole lot of questions. This is a great exercise to sit down with some of your colleagues and contemporaries in your community and begin to have this discussion about a community-wide or an LGA-wide approach to understanding what going on in SDA in your community, and then subsequently, what are the possibilities? Thanks very much.